Chris Steenmans. I'm head of program at the European Environment Agency, and I'm responsible for the information and communication technology and data management. Yes, we are in a fast-moving society, so the agency, a European organization which is responsible for data and information provision, need to be very flexible. And luckily, we can benefit a lot from latest new technological developments. And we, of course, are looking very careful how we can improve our efficiency to provide timely, targeted and relevant information, especially for the decision making in Europe, but more and more as well also in an international dimension for what we try to achieve in a better world. We are using now more and more geospatial technology and data in a concept that we call how to build a shared environmental information system where we integrate data which is available from different sources. It can be from space, it can be from the in situ monitoring networks which exist for many decades in Europe and at the global level. And what we are now trying to do is to address it from three different components. First of all, it's what do we need to provide for our politicians, the decision makers and the public at large. And that of course relates what are the emergent issues. And there we have, of course, a number of key topics like climate change, but as well environment and health. We need to make sure that the citizens who more and more live in urban areas have the relevant data and information at their fingertips. So that is a first package that we need to address. Secondly, we have to make sure that we have the right governance in place to deal with geospatial information. That means not only who we are addressing from the political level, from the business level, as well as from the public, but what does it mean with regard to agreements, the data policy that need to be put in place, and where we see as well that we move more and more to open data, free data policy that we as well as a public organization are promoting very much. So these are the elements of the second component. And then the third component is of course the technology, the infrastructure. And there of course we have enormous progress. The spatial data free infrastructure in Europe benefits a lot from a legal instrument, Inspire, that was implemented from 2007, and that by 2020 it will deliver the benefits of providing seamless geospatial information across the European continent. There is as well also huge investments in new technology, not at least in space, like the Copernicus program, where we have now very dedicated satellites, the Sentinels, that will help us to have the very targeted and much more timely data collection, the monitoring, in combination with what countries are collecting at ground level in situ. And these are just a few examples where we have tried to make better use of geospatial data with these three components. And that is needed because if you look the challenges we have ahead, and that also from a political level we have ahead for, let's say, a long-term vision 2050, we need to move towards what we call a transition agenda. We can't continue just monitoring what the quality is of water. We can't just look indeed whether bird species is declining. We have to take it from an integrated approach. Is the transport sector sustainable? Is not just making cars much more economic efficient, it's as well making sure that we don't clog further the roads in the capitals where more and more cities will move for doing their daily job as well as having a good life in good air quality. So these are just a few examples how we see the challenge of geospatial data and information in our work program. The Copernicus program is for the EU unique. It's for the first time that we have a programmatic approach, long-term and user-driven. And that I think we never had in the past. So that means that especially when we looked into the environmental domain, we never had such a huge investments where technology will help us to do our job much better, much faster and much more accurate. So that's why as well we as agency we are very keen as well to play a key role, and that's also threefold. we are helping there the European Commission on making sure that the in situ component, where there have been investments for many years in Europe on making sure that we collect the right different data related to environmental media, whether it's related to the marine environment, the water environment, soil, air. That as well, so that's where we try now to make sure that the satellites that are now being launched will provide us the complementary data to make it much more cost efficient, targeted to specific user communities. We have been working for many years with European Space Agency. It's part of our regulation where, as Environment Agency, we are working with other relevant international organizations that are dealing with the environmental sector. But now we decided to go for a memorandum of understanding because in the past we have been sharing a lot of our experience more on an ad hoc basis. We were participating in conference, in steering committees, whether from the space community, whether also from the environmental community. And we thought now that the quick development that is now happening in this sector, Earth observation, it would be good to have a much more coordinated and streamlined approach. And that is the main substance from this MOU. That means that now, on an annual basis, we will make sure that we have a coordinated approach where both agencies will be active to improve observations and monitoring of the environment. Copernicus is of course one of the programs that links to Earth observation, where ESA of course is playing a key role, agency as well, but it has not, the reason of the MOU was Copernicus was not the driver for it. That does not mean that Copernicus is not important in the cooperation between ESA and the European Environment Agency. On the contrary, we are fully relying on ESA to make sure that satellite data, and not just from the Sentinels, but from the multitude of satellite observation platforms, whether from national level or from other regions across the globe, are available to deliver for us the relevant environmental information for our stakeholders. We do not have a similar agreement with NASA. We do, however, similar agreements with quite a number of other European networks. Our mandate is focusing on Europe, of course, not neglecting that we play the interface between what is happening at the national level in the EU member states and our member countries, and at the global international level. But of course we are a small organization, and we will have to put our focus on what we can achieve in Europe, and making sure of course that has been picked up also at a global level. Where for instance with UNEP, United Nations Environmental Programme, with as well the statistical division from UN, we make sure that we have the right cooperation in place. We have quite a lot of contacts, of course, with different UN organizations. Most important is the United Nations Environmental Programme, where we have quite good cooperation, which is now especially a driver that should not be, that we need to mention, is the Sustainable Development Goals, where of course if you look, the environmental component in the SDGs is fairly key. UNEP, of course, is there a leading actor. We will make sure that for the European continent, and we do that together with our counterparts in Geneva of the UNEP European division, we make sure that as well that data and information on the environment and relevant for sustainable development is available as well for the global United Nations Environmental Programme. The COP21, we don't want to make the same mistake as in Copenhagen, so our main role is that we support the European Union, first of all, of course, the European Commission, but as well as the member states, making sure that we are weaponed, that we have the right package for the negotiations that will take place and that will be finalized in COP21, hopefully with a good outcome. So we not, I would say, in Paris, we will not be there the active organization on the scene, but we will make sure, and that has been happening already over the previous years and now also the last months, that the EU has the right data and information available to make sure that all the targets that we put forward in the context of climate change, in the context as well linked to resource efficiency and so on, 2020, 2030 and the long-term vision 2050 can be achieved. And there the instrument that hopefully will come out of the COP21 will be the right instrument to make sure that we stay below the 2 degrees level. I've been involved in Earth observation from the 70s, so from the very start with the Landsat, initially the Landsat program. There has been, first of all, I would admit, some kind of overselling, and where we now believe that society is ready now. There has been important changes since the 21st century, not at least if you see what now, and I think there, like Google Earth played an important role. If you see now the developments with technology on mobile devices, how geolocation is becoming part of many, if not almost every application that the citizen is using, that gives them as well the trigger, the importance of Earth observation, and not at least as well space-based. And that probably will make, that will do the change on how society will do the buy-in and see the relevance of these huge investments in very technological, very advanced instruments and infrastructure that you need to maintain, which cost lots of money, but at the end will benefit for every citizen on the globe. And that, I think, is that is probably why in the 20th century it was so difficult to get geospatial data accepted by the community at large. And I'm sure that this time it will be different. You need to be very realistic and see how society evolves. Take examples from now how business models are changing. I can give examples from another domain. If you take, for instance, Airbnb or the Uber taxi, an American company now who's, of course, where we can understand in Europe that it's creating a lot of tension with the taxi drivers, where the classical model on how to run a business is changing. So in that sense, I would say, let's not impose top-down on what technology should be taken up for all kinds of services. It needs to grow naturally. And that, I think, there the business community is playing an important role. Every individual knows best what he needs at that point in time and at what place. So I would be very careful to put too much pressure from, I would say, a political pressure or imposing a certain kind of technology. That will never work again. There is a difference, if you take the example indeed of environment. There, of course, if you look to the current political agenda, environment is very low, because not only in Europe, but as well at the global level, it's all about not only job, employment, poverty, the problem you see now with refugees or whatever. These are, of course, at the heart of most individuals at this moment, not necessarily the environmental component. That does not mean that the role, and that indeed is the responsibility of governments and also of organizations like us, is to make sure that environment is an important component in each of these elements. And there indeed, there you need to have a coordinated approach, very much indeed where the initiative needs to be taken at governmental level, but where at least it's the link to the relevance for the citizen is made clear, so that they can understand the investment, why it is important to make sure that we have a good environment. Now a lot of people are speaking about green economy. You can't have a good economy without a good green. So you need to make sure as well that the environment is taken care of.